I'm sorry, but you're really not explaining clearly why the decision was taken.
Well, with respect, Chair, I am explaining. You're just not wanting to hear the answer that I'm providing.
With the greatest of respect, sir.
Wow. Absolutely wondering how it got to here. Well, I'll just fill you in with a few of the blanks. This is a Home Affairs Select Committee meeting on the Wednesday the 8th of March 2023, and the subject of the Home Office was about Windrush. And let's just say they had a number of guests on, from David Neal, the Independent Chief Inspector of the Borders and Immigration, Wendy Williamson, CB, HM Inspector of Constabulary and HM Inspector of Fire and Rescue Services. She did a report on Windrush where she made 30 recommendations. Then, without consultation, without informing Wendy Williams, the government decided that they were going to take 3 of these recommendations out without giving any reason why they would take them out. They didn't get in contact with her, nothing. So, the chair of the Select Committee, Dame Diana Johnson, if I remember, Labour MP for Hull North. Don't at me if I've got it wrong, do apologise. But let's just say, don't cross Dame Diana Johnson. She's not shrinking violet, that's for certain. So watch this. It is absolutely magnificent.
Thank you. So I'm sure you're aware we've had a number of panels this morning. I think the overriding question I've got for you is, in light of the announcement by the Home Secretary in January about not accepting or not moving forward with the 3 recommendations from the Wendy Williams review, what exactly has the Home Office got about not being properly scrutinised and having external scrutiny? What's the problem?
Well, thank you, Chair. Before I start on that, can I just explain why I'm here rather than any other minister? And the reason for that is that I'm the minister with oversight of the Windrush Compensation Scheme and the Windrush...
We're very clear on that.
Compensation Scheme
Yeah.
and the Windrush Data Scheme.
Yeah.
Yes, in relation to the suggestion that the department is somehow adverse to scrutiny, I'm afraid I simply don't accept that characterisation. The decision to decline recommendations 9 and 10 was taken after very careful consideration on the advice of officials.
We've just heard from Wendy Williams. There was no conversation with Wendy Williams about deciding not to carry forward what had been agreed. I mean, Priti Patel agreed that all 30 recommendations would be implemented. That was what everyone was working on, that basis. So what's the evidence that you didn't want to carry on with those?
Well, with respect, Chair, the discussion that I referred to a moment ago was with officials and internally in the department.
Yes, so can you explain it to me?
Well, if I could have a moment,
okay.
I will do that.
We haven't got much time. It's 11:25, so we're just keen to crack on.
The Home Office is committed to the importance of scrutiny. And as you know, there's nothing unusual in the methods of scrutiny adopted for this department. Indeed, you will be aware that Recommendation 20 was implemented, and we now have the Independent Examiner of Complaints. We also have the reviewer of the compensation scheme, Professor Martin Levermore.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment, but in terms of my question, perhaps you could answer that.
Well, your question was what's the scrutiny on the department? And clearly, the Home Department is regularly scrutinised by Parliament, as is entirely correct. We receive a very large number of letters and questions from members of Parliament and the good officers of this committee. And there can be no suggestion that there's any want of scrutiny of the Home Office. And I'm afraid just suggesting that failure to implement recommendations 9 and 10 means that the Home Office is evading scrutiny is a mistaken view. OK,
well, I disagree with you completely on that. We've just had Wendy Williams tell us that her view was there was a three-legged stool approach to effective scrutiny in the Home Office. That's what she concluded in the recommendations that she made in her review. So the Independent Examiner of Complaints, which you're absolutely right, we understand was appointed in October, looking at extending the remit and role of the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. That was one of her recommendations. And the third one was the Migrants Commissioner. So she says those three sit together as a three-legged stool. That's what you need to have effective scrutiny of the Home Office. Now, you've pulled away two of those legs, and I am not clear. You haven't spoken to Wendy Williams. You've got officials advising you on this, and I'm not clear what your explanation is for why you think just the one-legged stool is effective scrutiny when Wendy Williams has made it very clear the three sit together.
With respect, Chair, you did really listen very carefully to what Wendy Williams said. What she said was that the three recommendations within her report together, she thought, formed a piece. She didn't say that that was the totality of the scrutiny of the department.
No, but she said it was important.
Now, I'm just going to stop it. I have a sneaky feeling that Lord Murray has a slight problem with, women who are in authority or in authoritative positions. Because, and how do I know? Well, in another video, you will understand why. If you haven't seen it, I'll leave a link up or down below, where he tries to sort of like disrespect Diane Abbott. And what I will say is, when Stuart C. MacDonald tore chunks out of him, there were none of that. It just seems to be that when it came to Dame Diana Johnson and Diane Abbott was sort of like tearing chunks into his arguments, you could tell the slight little remarks. It clearly doesn't like women of authority. That's my view. What's yours?
I'm asking you, as a minister in the government, why you've decided, having initially, under Priti Patel, accepted the 30 recommendations, why you have chosen now to pull out those two, which seem to us as a committee quite an important part of Wendy Williams' recommendations.
The answer is clear, that we have considered the best way of ensuring scrutiny of the department, and in our view, with respect, we differed in those two regards from Wendy Williams.
So could you explain that to me then? What is it that you're doing now that you think provides that effective scrutiny?
Well, as I've already said, we have the independent examiner of complaints, we have the role of the ICIBI in the relevant areas, and as Miss Abbott elicited from David Neal, we have the reports of the Chief Inspector of Prisons in relation to detention facilities, and we have the scrutiny provided by Parliament and by this committee.
Why do you think Priti Patel accepted the recommendations in the first place?
Well, I can't answer for the mindset of the former Home Secretary.
But the Home Office agreed to accept the recommendations. The government, of which you're a member, agreed to accept the recommendations. So what's changed?
There was a review, as we made very clear in the written ministerial statement, careful consideration within the department, and it was considered that those three recommendations of the 27 would not be taken forward. And the reasons were clearly set out in the written ministerial statement.
Why? That's what we don't understand as a committee.
Well, it's clear. If we look at the written ministerial statement, shall I just take the committee to it? The reasons are set out.
Well, tell us then.
Firstly, on reconciliation events, on the balance of expert evidence received on how to approach this incredibly sensitive subject, the Home Secretary was persuaded that there were more effective ways of engaging with those impacted. The department has undertaken, and you heard Ms. Williams agreeing with this, a significant programme of face-to-face engagement with communities that were impacted by the Windrush scandal. Surgeries were held in community halls in places such as churches, mosques and care homes, and as and where the need was identified. Engagement events were held in most major cities across the UK, including regions such as the West Midlands, the London and the South West. And the events were hosted by senior members of the Windrush programme and provided individuals with the opportunity to speak about the impact of the scandal they had on their families' lives.
Right,
and I myself attended the Windrush National Organisation Conference to speak to those affected.
Could you deal with the issues around the Migrants Commissioner and the Independent Inspector? Those are the ones I asked you about.
Certainly. Well, the recommendations 9 and 10 related to the establishment of a Migrants Commissioner and the expansion potentially of the role of the review of the role of the ICIBI. And the Home Secretary confirmed in the written ministerial statement that she's committed to the importance of scrutiny, both internal and external. And there are a number of ways in which the Home Office invited that challenge. In October 2022, as I say, the appointment of the Independent Examiner of Complaints was completed, and that ensures that customers who are not satisfied with a final response to their complaints have an opportunity to take their complaint to an independent reviewer, helping the Home Office to identify and learn wider lessons from complaints.
You're not explaining to me about why the Home Secretary decided not to proceed with the Migrants Commissioner or with the role and remit of the Inspectorate being expanded.
Well, as I say, the Home Secretary considered both the creation of the IEC and the appointment of Professor Martin Levermore as the independent advisor to the scheme and worked with the colleagues in the Windrush working group.
That's not answering the question.
All of that, in the view of the Home Secretary, meant that it was inappropriate to continue with recommendations 9 and 10.
I'm sorry, but you're really not explaining clearly why the decision was taken.
Well, with respect, Chair, I am explaining, and you're just not wanting to hear the answer that I'm providing.
With the greatest of respect, sir, I'm asking you specific questions. I expect a Minister of the Crown to answer the questions that a chair of a select committee puts to you.
And I have answered the question.
I'm going to bring in other colleagues because I can see clearly you're not wanting to answer my questions.
Wow. Clearly, he's got a problem with women who are in authority, I suppose. Because clearly, he wasn't answering the question, really. He was just basically just reading a script and stuff like that. If they had legitimate reasons to take at least these two recommendations, 9 and 10, wouldn't they have gone to Wendy Williams and maybe even David Neal and said, look, we're going to take these out because we've got this in place, X, Y, and Z, and we think would be much more effective. But they didn't even contact them, didn't even get in contact. It was as if, well, yeah, we know better than you. You know, Wendy Williams, she wrote the report, so I think she would have a better understanding, wouldn't she? Well, in my eyes, I think she would do. But what do you guys think? I found him very arrogant, and like as I said, I don't think he'd have said that if, let's just say, Stu C. MacDonald was the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. What do you guys think? Leave your answers down below, or your comments down below, should I say. And until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.